Daily Stoic. Let's have some wisdom for today, 27th of January. This is a long one. Buckle up. Epictetus, Discourses. There are three areas in which the person who would be wise and good must be trained. The first has to do with desires and aversions, that a person may never miss the mark in desires nor fall into what repels them. The second has to do with impulses to act and not to act, and, more broadly, with duty, that a person may act deliberately for good reasons and not carelessly. The third has to do with freedom from deception and composure and the whole area of judgment, the assent our mind gives to its perceptions. Of these areas, the chief and most urgent is the first, which has to do with the passions. For strong emotions arise only when we fail in our desires and aversions. There's a lot to unpack there. Wow. First of all, three things. Firstly, desires and aversions. Secondly, impulses to act and not to act, and duty. And thirdly, judgment. Freedom from deception and composure. Now it says the first is the most important because it deals with the passions and the emotions. So a good example of this was in Impact Theory, podcast I love to listen to with Tom Bilyeu as the host. And on this episode he had on Alex Hormozy, and they were talking about values. And Alex Hormozy was of the opinion that values are actually skills that you can learn. Tom was coming at it from a different angle, that values are something that you aspire to and align your life towards those values. And I suppose they're both right in a sense. Semantics maybe. But the example that Alex gave was that imagine if you're out at a bar and a hot girl comes up to you and says, "Do you want to go home with me tonight?" And you're married and you have a choice. You can say, you can follow your desires maybe. You imagine you have that desire. You can say, "Yep, I'll do that." And then, you've broken your word, you've broken your commitment. And you can train yourself to say no, even though your desires might pull you in a different direction. You can use your reason and your logic and your commitment and your honour to say no. So that's an example of what I take from that. The aversions part, that you may miss the mark in desires nor fall into what repels them. So I suppose drug addiction, maybe alcoholism. That's, for me, repellent behaviour, but there is a desire that I every day have to deal with and choose to live a clean life, because that behaviour isn't where I want to be and it leads to feelings of aversion. So that's what I take from that. The second has to do with impulses to act and not to act, and more broadly with duty, that a person may act deliberately for good reasons and not carelessly. So yeah, that's kind of intertwined with the first one, isn't it, in a sense, with that example in the bar where you're using your reason in order to determine how to act in a given situation that acts honourably. And it uses the word there, duty. That's an honourable value. For me, honour and duty are kind of intertwined in some ways. The third has to do with freedom from deception and composure and the whole area of judgment, the assent our mind gives to its perceptions. Judgment. So, yeah, that's probably the most challenging one for me to get into my head. Judgmentalism, that's something I struggle with. It's something I'm aware of when it happens, which is a good sign. It means I'm working on eradicating that or converting it into something else through some kind of alchemy, And that's a work in progress. And I believe that my low self-esteem and fear-based living are partly based on judgmentalism as it comes at me. I'm worried about what people think about what I'm doing, who I am, what content I'm putting out there, the whole thing. And I think that either feeds into my judgmentalism or the other way around, or both, but it doesn't really matter. By practicing not being judgmental, hopefully my fear of self-expression and the way that I act in the world will start to improve, and it will become a beautiful feedback loop, you know. Maybe I'm not quite right with the interpretation there of judgment as Epictetus meant it, but there we go. I'm fearlessly putting this out there. Judge me if you will. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.